Frederick Jones. Is there a Frederick Jones on this panel?
There's supposed to be,
Oh,
yes.
okay.
He was in my email.
Oh, yeah, that's right, there's four.
Oh, so we should switch over.
Yeah, if we are.
Here, I'm gonna get closer. I'll put my bag right here.
Okay.
I'm whispering it into the mic.
Let's see.
Okay, so do we have 5 mics? Yeah.
So I got a couple minutes. So I already told them after you all introduce yourselves, I'm going to go into some book challenge statistics, like nationwide information. So I'll just throw that in there and then we'll get into the questions.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you. So, do you live in California? I live in Boston. Oh, wow. Where do you live? We're in Los Angeles. So we drove down. Yeah, last night.
I wonder if I have a timekeeper. Probably not. Doesn't look like
I
it.
saw
How
someone
long is Boston
showing
home?
signs when there was 5 minutes left.
Oh, okay. Okay. That's always helpful.
Oh, wow.
My ADHD brain sometimes.
I understand.
Time slip.
Wow.
Love LA, but I missed, I'm just a
Hey, Joel.
Oh, yeah. Got
Hey,
it.
Joel.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Can you take
I
pictures?
went to Boston. Well, we went to
that would be nice to share.
a couple years ago.
Oh, yeah.
First
I'll
time
send
to
you.
Retreat. Went to Boston. Visited the museum. Oh, I like it. You know? Yeah.
Oh, yeah. It's a challenge. Oh, no, just like during the pandemic. Yeah. Thanks. And not like a whole bunch, just like one or two.
Oh, that's beautiful.
I appreciate it.
And I got
Matthew's off doing his thing.
really on in Chicago, and I just got tired.
My husband's usually my photographer.
And so like Boston.
Yeah.
They're right
Yeah.
here. Is that a
Yeah.
box? Oh, right. Jennie back there, right?
Shawneé, nice to meet you. Nice to meet you, Shawnelle.
Okay.
I don't see any photos. I have to go grab them from the back.
So 12, so we should be.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Next one is at 1.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Testing. Sounds good. Okay. Good morning, everybody. Hello. So thank you all for joining us today for the Bans Off Our Books panel. I have with me an embarrassment of riches of talent up here who are going to talk about this extremely important topic. I know as a librarian, this is very important to me. I will introduce myself. My name is Jack Phoenix. I am the collection development manager for the Cuyahoga Falls Library in Ohio. I'm also the graphic novel selector for Brodart, a library vendor. I'm also the author of a book called Maximizing the Impact of Comics in Your Library, which is a guidebook for librarians. I would like to invite the panelists to introduce themselves, and then I'm going to go ahead and share with you why we're here today.
Hello, everyone. My name is Joe Cepeda. I'm an author-illustrator. I spent most of my career initially, or the first half of my career, illustrating books, children's books largely. I'm kind of new to the comic realm. I illustrated and wrote a early reader graphic novel / comic book, so I feel a little like a newbie up here, but glad to talk on this topic and share whatever I can.
Hi, my name is Frederick Jones. I am the publisher and founder of a company called Saturday AM. We're the world's most diverse manga brand, which of course manga is one of the hottest categories for young readers globally. I started the company with the belief that manga, which is becoming a massive art form, very similar to the Jack Kirby era in the 60s, or even prior to that, the pop art movement from Andy Warhol. He popularized kind of the stuff we saw in the Batman, Boom, Pow, Zap And then you get to the image comics in the 90s. Manga has become the visual narrative for this current generation of young people and beyond. And the idea that manga would be as popular as it is and then not normalize people to be heroes who look like all of us in this room was a challenge to me. So I started the company. One of our titles that I create is called Clock Striker, which is Shonen Manga's first black female lead character, and we've been very tickled with the success of it. So that's it.
My name is Jennie Wood, and I want to take a second to thank you all for coming to talk about such an important topic and the library for hosting it. I am a comic book, graphic novel, novelist, young adult author. I primarily write queer-themed graphic novels. Flutter was a series that I did for Dark Horse. It's about a girl who shapeshifted into a boy because the girl she liked was straight. And then just dealt with gender issues, how boys are treated differently throughout that series. I wrote a young adult novel called A Boy Like Me, which was set in North Carolina and featured a trans boy protagonist in high school. And my latest book is on Mad Cave. It's a young adult graphic novel called Paper Planes.
Fantastic. Nice to meet you all. I'm Shawneé Gibbs. This is my sister Shawnelle. We're writing partners, and we are the authors of Ghost Rose, which is a YA graphic novel that was released on HarperCollins Versify earlier this year. Our backgrounds are, we come from animation as well as independent comics. So we started, writing our own comics years ago, and are newbies as well to the graphic novel space. And so it's an honor to chat with you all about banned books today. Yeah, and I'm very excited to be here as well. Shawnelle Gibbs, and our book Ghost Rose was illustrated by Emily Cannon. And it has themes of history, African American history, socioeconomic issues, and lots of things going on that we'll get into today. And I'm excited to be here and glad you all have joined us.
Great, thank you all so much for being here. Yes, thank you. And I do want to echo the sentiments. Thank you for the library for hosting us. Thank you for San Diego Comic-Con for putting on this event. This is an extremely important topic, and I want to begin by saying that if you're here, you probably know that there is an epidemic of book bans, book challenges, however you want to phrase it, in this country right now. Public libraries are being attacked, school libraries are being attacked, classrooms are being attacked, and unfortunately the workers in those institutions as well. But on top of that, publishers and creators are also being attacked and feeling the pressure. So that's why I think talking about this topic is so important, to establish these relationships and make sure and help we can all work together to spread awareness to you and to the public, so that we can hopefully do something about it. So just some information I want to share with you. A graphic novel, actually a graphic memoir, was once again the most challenged book of 2023. That is Genderqueer by Maya Kobabe. Challenges surged 65% from 2022 to 2023. We're looking at 4,240 unique title challenges, so that means individual titles. 4,000 individual titles across the country were challenged in public libraries and school libraries. The number of titles targeted surged by 92%, so that 4,000 number is 92% higher than what it was in 2022. 56% of these challenges happened in public libraries, which is that is a 92% increase for challenges in public libraries and only an 11% increase in school libraries. And what that tells us is that the groups that are responsible for this have already targeted the school libraries, already done their dirty work there, and now they're turning to public libraries. So it is quickly gaining steam. And all of this information came from the American Library Association Office of Intellectual Freedom. They are also associated with a group called Unite Against Book Bans. I was part of the working group that created a project that they have launched called Book Resumes. And publishers and creators are partnering with libraries and Unite Against Book Bans to create book resumes as a resource for parents, librarians, educators, anyone who needs them in the fight against these challenges. You can find more information about that at bookresumes.uniteagainstbookbans.org, and then of course you can reach out to me after the panel. I want to share one quick quote, and then we'll get on to our questions. From the Office of Intellectual Freedom: "Books are not the sole target of attacks orchestrated by conservative parent groups and right-wing media. Both school and public librarians are increasingly in the crosshairs of conservative groups during book challenges and subject to defamatory name-calling, online harassment, social media attacks, and doxing, as well as direct threats to their safety, their employment, and their very liberty." So I just can't stress enough how it's not only the materials that are being challenged here and being threatened, it is people. So on that bright and happy note, I would really like to, for each of the panelists to please share what makes the library in your community special to you. And if we can actually start over there and head this way.
Oh, yeah. I've always felt libraries are safe spaces. They've always been safe spaces for me, and a place where I could go to get away from the noise of the world when I was fearful. I grew up in Oakland, California, and so sometime when I grew up, there was a lot happening in our schools that were really scary. And sometimes, when the school library wasn't available, I spent a lot of my time, not only in our neighborhood library, but the larger main libraries are always, was one of my favorites, like, Oakland, Berkeley, in those areas. And so I discovered Octavia Butler there. I discovered worlds that transported me from things in the household and also in my community that felt unsafe. So for these safe spaces, I'm just very excited that there are librarians and even the community getting behind librarians to protect young readers, especially from these attacks. So I'm excited about the work you all are doing. I'm here to support it. I'm gonna write as many books as I can to just continue my personal work as well. So, but just a safety is what I think of when I think of the library. Yeah, I second that. I mean, we grew up together. I got to shout out the librarians at Golden Gate Library in North Oakland and Berkeley. Somebody worked. We just randomly at ALA last year in Chicago. I was at a table for our publisher, and there was just randomly somebody from Golden Gate Library sitting there, and it just felt so special. I'm like. I don't know, full circle. Yeah. So these places created, as Shawnelle was saying, safety for us and a place for us to dream. I mean, Berkeley Public Library, the main branch was, we were the kind of kids that's where we were going after school to hang out and just discover stuff. So it's just an important place for children to dream, because if those libraries didn't exist, we wouldn't be sitting here today. I could guarantee you that, because even some of the themes that we write about, whether science fiction or supernatural or speculative, I credit discovering Octavia Butler and all sorts of authors that helped me to just imagine beyond what was available to me, and so yeah, it's very I'm thankful for the librarians in this room and for the librarians who continue to do the work, because one thing that I don't think the public is aware of is how much pressure you are facing. I mean, sometimes you hear about, the challenges that are going on with banned books, but I don't think people are aware about just how dangerous it's getting for librarians, for everybody. And so, yeah, we will continue to fight the good fight, and I'm happy to have these conversations to help more people become aware of what's going on.
So I grew up in a small conservative southern town in North Carolina, and as a kid, the library was one of, if not, it was really the only safe space. And it's where I could go in and see characters that I could relate to, and it also helped me discover that by writing, I could write my way out of that small town. Because I got a scholarship to go to a school in Chicago where I could major in writing. I mean, I would not be sitting here. I don't know if I'd be alive. I mean, I'm not being dramatic without that library. And I currently live in Boston. I live in the South End, and our South End branch of the library is closed because it's flooded, and it's been closed for a while. And it's one of those things when you don't have something, you're just reminded of how important it is, how vital it is. It's a sense of community. We have book events there, so authors don't have that space to have readings, to promote their work, and the community doesn't have that place to meet. And it's just so important that we have spaces like this.
So I'm going to say something a little different because she's from North Carolina and I'm from North Carolina. And she left North Carolina. She's like, I had to go somewhere else. And I'm like, no, you didn't. I went to UNC Chapel Hill. You have to go anywhere else. You got great schools there, woman. So like, no. No, I'll say, the other thing I'll say is just real quickly is that, so I'm a little different. I grew up in Durham. We had a comic book store near Duke University. I live not too far from there, called Books Do Furnish a Room. It was run by three people, two queer gentlemen, and I never felt, I'm not part of the queer community, but I never felt more at home there. I was a black kid who grew up in a mostly white neighborhood. We were one of like three families that were of other ethnicity. Everyone else was white. So it was too black for the white kids, and it was too white for the black kids. And the comic book store was home. That store was home to me. I discovered a lot there, and it was a very big independent comic book store as well. So I discovered, the great creators from graphic novels, Jeff Smith and Walt Kelly and Jim Steranko, and obviously classic, Wally Wood and so on and so forth. So I developed very early on a love of the visual narrative. The library for me wasn't that, not because it wasn't a safe space, but because it didn't have comic books. I'm 50, so like that was not the case back then. But just to bring it all home, what has been interesting to me, having gone through generations and seen the comic stores be not very safe places for women in particular, we were here just a couple weeks ago, actually. I sent two of my creators here for ALA. ALA is one of my favorite shows, hands down. And I told our creators, I said, you're going to love ALA. And they said, well, why? Of all the shows we go to, we're here for San Diego Comic-Con, and we go to Anime Expo, and I said, I'm going to tell you why, because not since I was a kid, and I would go into Books to Furnish a Room, have I ever felt appreciation for just being someone who loves creativity. I was an executive in the video game industry for a long time. E3 was a show I would go to all the time. And it was so loud and so full of testosterone, but only at American Library Association, and therefore the library, do you get a sense that you're not there to compete. You're there to celebrate creativity and art and personal expression. And so while that was not my experience growing up, that is my experience today. And therefore I do take great pride in our relationship to the library community. It's been very kind to my company, but also take great pride in what it means for young people to know they can go to the local library and find a wealth and a diverse selection of content that can take their creativity to the next level. So. Oh, sorry.
I guess I'd echo that all the statements. And I was here a month ago at ALA as well. And I've had a couple of opportunities to go, and it is wonderful to meet all those librarians who are fighting every day, fighting the good fight. Actually, I think a couple of the two last books I illustrated, I dedicated one to public librarians and one to school librarians for doing exactly that. But when I was, I grew up in East Los Angeles. I identify as Chicano in a sort of times in the 60s and 70s where, as a community, we were struggling to figure out who we were and all of that. I was in 4th grade, and our teacher, Ms. Emmel, would read us Charlie and the Chocolate Factory every day after lunch, paragraph by paragraph, chapter by chapter, and I was rapt. I just couldn't wait to get to hear that story. But I didn't grow up with a lot of books. There were no books in our house. We didn't have the habit or culture of going to books, though my parents did feel strongly about getting educated and all that. My dad, his highest education was the 6th grade. My mom came from Mexico, and she just, high school was it for her. So it was all, and I'm the oldest sibling, so it was all new frontier for me. Everything was pathfinding for me. So the library, both the school library and the public library, East Los Angeles Library on 3rd Street, were the place where I could go find stories and didn't have to have a story read to me. So I couldn't tell you specifically that I learned about this author, that author there, or anything like that, but what I did learn was the habit or the ability or experience of walking through aisles and just picking up a book and seeing what it presented to me and then finding what I liked and slowly developing that identity of who I might be, or laying those foundations. So I'm very indebted to libraries for that particular reason, because they allow someone who might not have, let's say, that sort of support or whatever, to go initiate their own search to who they might be.
And this will be a popcorn question, so just answer in any order, whoever wants to jump in. What do you see happening in regards to censorship in your profession or in your communities?
I see it dividing communities. And not just in our country. I have a friend who is a Canadian writer who has a great comic graphic novel community where she lives in Vancouver, but she was asked not to attend a comic convention because of the content of her books. She is Jewish. She does write about Israel, but she's very critical of Israel. And so they asked her not to bring the books, then they asked her not to come. And it just created this divide in her life, in her community. It's hard watching that happen when something like, authors are affected, illustrators, publishers, librarians, but then there's the community at large that is just split apart, is torn apart. And a lot of these books that are being challenged, sometimes the people who are challenging them aren't even aware of the content of the book or the meaning behind the book, and that's really upsetting to watch. And we all have voices. We all can go to library board meetings, school board meetings, council meetings, and do what we can, thankfully, because that's how we can fight it.
Just as a publisher, what I would just say is that, I've said this in the last keep the book ban panel. I said this in I think New York Comic Con last year, but I think as a publisher, there's a couple things that I think that's always interesting, from our vantage point. One of those, the fact that so what you all, how many people here are actually in the library system? You guys actually are employed. Okay, all right, got it. So I say that because Texas is a funny state. Texas accounts for publishers about 1/3 of all book sales. That's how powerful they are. And so when they start to, play shenanigans with, what books can be seen or distributed in the state, is very concerning, because then it affects not just the politic of it and the culture of it, but it affects the livelihood of it. I think they're trying to destroy communities, but I think more importantly, and I say this as an African American, I think what really they're trying to do is frankly control young people having empathy. And I think that's the most devastating part of it, is that they just don't want young people to identify with or sympathize with individuals who are different, to understand what it feels like to be impacted by decisions that can harm a community. And I think that it's incumbent, obviously, on all of us, but I think the library does represent, because it's not a profit center, so it represents that last line of protection of ideas and creativity and young people being able to truly appreciate what it means to be part of a community. And so I take very seriously that idea for the library, but I do think it's unfortunately more nefarious. I think they're trying to literally destroy empathy from young people.
Yeah, I completely agree. I feel like we work across mediums as well, and in graphic novels, just the idea that Jerry Craft and Raina are like all attacked on these lists is just insane to me, you know? But also in animation, where we've worked as well, we've had our educational consultants tell us that specifically that people are trying to eliminate social emotional learning for the youngest audience members. So, you know, preschool, where you just, at the very beginning, they're trying to eliminate, you know, things like empathy and caring for others. It's like, why is this under attack? To me, it just feels scary, and but it also makes me more brave and more determined about doing this work.
The question was what we see in our.
Yeah, what are you seeing in your profession regarding censorship or your community?
Well, as a creator, of course, I think the below the surface censorship is, I mean, well, overtly we can look and, I mean, we could see publicly a list of books that are being censored or banned or whatever, and of course if a book is challenged, right, that's almost just as bad because it lays in limbo or whatever until someone decides whether it's bad or not, so it's essentially not available as well, right?
It's actually bad policy, but I can't say, some libraries will do that. They shouldn't be.
Okay.
It's against our ethic, but sometimes it does happen.
You know more than me. What I fear is that what happens to a creator who might be censoring themselves or holding back or not writing the story. So there's this whole other level of deep banning or whatever you want to call it that is occurring if we're afraid to write what we write what we want to write. My colleagues and everyone I know seems to want to continue to do it and will be doing it, but you don't know. Everybody's got to put food on the table. Everybody's got to do that stuff. Everybody work, you know, the people you write stories for have their agendas, and it filters down in many ways that are not so necessarily obvious.
Yeah, when you say that, I think about editors and, in particular, new voices.
Right.
Because if you don't have the experience to be able to stand up, we've had some notes, you know, a couple of notes where we've had to be like, you know what, no, this is the story we're telling. This is why we're telling this story, and had to explain to them why we weren't going to take that note and just like move forward. But I can't imagine being, you know, younger and feeling like, oh, this is my big break, and having somebody else's voice kind of interrupt that, you know, based on their own agenda, you know? So I think protecting the newcomers in the space as well. Yeah, I feel like there's a climate of fear that is brewing, and because we come from, you know, the days of being able to freely, you know, walk into a library and, you know, use our library cards and have that as a safe space, you know, and when the climate of fear persists for too long, I think that's when the creators, all of us, we start to shrink. So I mean, I just love that we're here. I love that we're continuing to talk. I mean, it takes a lot to be brave as a creator to say, like, these are the kind of stories I want to tell, especially in the face of, like, mounting uncertainty, the country, oh my gosh, where are we? You know what I mean? Like, at this point. To be sort of reminded to be brave, and then seeing the librarians out there, it's like, you remind us, this is why we're doing it, and all of us sort of, standing together, I think that's just really important, and it fuels us, when it gets scary, and yeah, we're just kind of in scary times a bit.
I'll just chime in with the library perspective, because you just all really hit on something, that the self-censorship and the fear. I don't know if it might be an exaggeration to call this terrorism, but that's what it feels like. It
absolutely does.
Creating fear to prevent us from doing something, to self-censorship before we even do it. So that self-censorship is supposed to be affecting us too. That's the plan. It's that I might be threatened with being doxxed if I buy that book about that African-American experience, or about that LGBT experience, or about that brown experience, anything. I might have to suffer for that decision. Another popcorn question, so just jump in at any point. Are there any particular bans or challenges that you've seen, maybe they're newsworthy or not, maybe they're local to you, that you find especially troubling?
Well, I couldn't imagine, and this is just from my experience as a young person, knowing that Maya Angelou's I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings has been on the list for a long time. Now, I know it's probably evolved from when parents, possibly, maybe a parent or two, back when I was in high school, said, oh, you know what, I kind of don't agree, versus organized groups coming together and just trying to destroy diversity. But I just can't imagine life without having read that book, because it was so relevant to what was happening to me at that time, even growing up in that same area and going through some of those similar experiences, even if they might have challenged a little bit of, my experience. I just can't imagine going through life without having read that book. I was changed. And just knowing that organizations are coming against books that can have that same effect on young people in many different spaces, in schools and also in public libraries, is just, I don't know, just crazy. I hate to just, it sounds, but it's crazy.
I couldn't tell you specifically, but I'm in the picture world field, and the earliest readers, and I do some work for like beginning readers, and something you said about social emotional learning, even like trying to edit that out or find the way out. And when I run across a list of like picture books, like innocent picture books that have made it to lists, I just cannot understand that. They're for the youngest readers, and I think that's why that is so terribly, terribly scary. Like, come on.
Just another way that the banning and censorship hurts. So I was part of an anthology called Love is Love, which did really well, and that was great because all the money, the proceeds for it, went to the victim's family from the Orlando Pulse nightclub shooting. But that book was banned in Texas. Again, that's just another way that you're taking that book off the shelves. People aren't going to see that book. They're not going to go buy that book. They're not going to support that book. And so that money that could really help those families and give them comfort was taken away. So this banning, it just has this ripple effect that I don't think a lot of people even realize.
I would just, I mean, I totally agree with that. I think the one that just, never makes sense to me, none of them make sense to me. I mean, Mouse makes no sense to me, genderqueer makes no sense to me, even though I understand, the notion that it might be older reader, but the one that I think, as I said earlier, I think this is deliberate. I think this is, as you indicated, I think this is an attack, a very, very nuanced political attack, because the Ruby Bridges one, that's the one that makes no sense to me. The Ruby Bridges one, the one about a little girl who helped to desegregate her school, and it's a young reader's book. How does that, what possible reasons I get banned for, except for that it's discussing something that might provide young people with some empathy and some understanding of what life has been like, and how recently, life has been challenged for many of us. So, but again, it just makes me feel like there's clearly an agenda here.
Right.
I mean, we have to just acknowledge there's an agenda.
I think it was on your resume thing, I was looking at it earlier somewhere, used the phrase of erasure of history.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's the part that feels obviously nefarious and purposeful and strategic.
100%. And then just to the point too about because let's be clear that these books are banned in libraries, but they're not banned, right? Like, they're not banned. Like, you can get the book. But the challenge though is that it makes it more complicated. And if you are a struggling young person who's in the queer community and you're really, someone tells you that there's this wonderful book that can really, make you feel seen and can really provide you a sense of purpose in that moment. We've all had that. We've all had that moment where something appeals to us. In that moment, we buy it right then. And or go check it out at the library at that moment. And the fact that you would, again, purposefully make it more complicated for someone to just exercise a basic right of being able to educate themselves or to expound their opportunity. I think that's what makes it so nefarious and so just troubling, given the fact, again, that everyone here is so committed to trying to make more opportunities for these young people possible.
Yeah, I was especially shocked about Jerry Craft's New Kid. And I mean, especially because graphic novels have been helping those students who, may not, reluctant readers who may not, feel strong enough to read a traditional novel. They're sort of the bridge for kids, and we've been hearing a lot, even in our work, like, your graphic novel, is getting like my child to read, getting younger people interested in reading novels. I think particularly targeting graphic novels is, it hurts young people who may be like, experiencing those sort of reading challenges. And
No, you touched on something that, again, for our community in particular, that I think is very important for our communities in particular, because I think this is very true for the Black and brown community. Young Black and brown kids, and there's data to support this, are not reading as much as they have in the past. Manga is the gateway for them. More young adult, more graphic novels are the gateway for them. And so if you eliminate the ability for them to see themselves, you eliminate the ability for them to see avenues into becoming more ardent readers, that chokes off their ability to learn, that chokes off their ability to wonder, and we end up in a situation where we're now creating just a really, perfunctory sort of society. It just doesn't have just even a great opportunity to be able to even just be able to be critical.
And this actually wasn't one of the questions that I had on the outline, but I'm just curious, what are your thoughts on why comics and graphic novels and manga in particular? Like, why do you think that medium is under attack?
Because it's accessible. It's accessible. I mean, there are plenty of surveys. We participate in many of these surveys. There are white papers that speak to this. In fact, one just came out not too long ago. The African American youth represent 13% of the population. If you look at anime, and by that extrapolation, manga, they over-index at 20%. And it gets higher the younger you go. So, you know what I mean? Like that's it right there. Like, young kids they're getting into anime, they're getting into manga, they're getting into graphic novels, Dogman to Naruto and so on. And so when you have that situation, I think it just comes down to the fact that, it's escapism, it's accessible, it's visual. This is a visual narrative that's become quite sincere for this generation. And so I just think that's probably the key reason. I hope it's not that they don't like to read anymore. I hope that's not true.
I think it's access is really the thing.
Good point. That's a good point.
The strategy is to cut off access, and on the other side, when I speak at certain educational conferences and stuff, and I met a lot of teachers who teach in the Latino community and all that, who have always pointed out to me, wow, can I get this book or this book in Spanish? Can I get it in whatever? That there's just a big need. Graphic novels, especially, overlap into that. So there's a need for it, and it's almost at the same time. There's also someone thinks there's a need to cut that off, but.
One last thing I would say real quickly. I don't want to monopolize this real quickly. Is that when you said access, it just dawned on me. The other thing too, I think we sometimes don't think about, and again, this is not quite librarian, so forgive me for saying this, but webtoons are becoming really popular.
Yeah.
Webtoons are becoming very popular. We talk about access. Oh my God! Like you're sitting in a grocery store and they just pop up their phone and start reading stories. And again, those are primarily visual narrative, like graphic novels.
Right.
So again, it's like you said, it's financial, it's politics, but it's access with these kids, and I think that's why graphic novels in particular have just really taken off.
And Jennie, you had mentioned that, like sometimes like folks don't even, the folks doing the challenging don't even actually read the material. And so for sure, these visual materials, it's easy to take a single panel out of context.
Yes.
And just blow it up and say, oh, look, it's porn or something
Right,
like that,
right,
or,
right.
It's obscene. I am going to move on to the next question. Let's start at the end of the table over there. From your point of view, what would you like to see done to address this issue, to stop it or slow it? And are there any action items that you have in your mind that you could share?
I do love that there is something in place. I'm not exactly sure, but you just kind of spoke to it where, particularly with graphic novels, if somebody is contesting or challenging one panel, you know what I mean, or one page of a book, that there is some sort of requirement or for them to for librarians or some overseeing committee to just like help contextualize what is actually happening in the book. Like, okay, so you're talking about this panel on page, 87 of a book. Okay, but let's zoom out and see, what the context was, kind of a review committee or something to really just like get to the bottom of what, and have it be sort of like more standardized, and then something like that. I'm not sure if that exists. I'm just, one person, but something like that I feel like would really help to cut down on some of these like frivolous challenges. And so that's something that I would love to see, something just more standardized. Hey, okay, so help us to understand what you're talking about so that we can see that what you're trying to attack here. And
Yeah, our common term for that typically in the profession is request for reconsideration
Yes.
form. Yeah, and it'll either be a form or a process.
Yeah,
And then the book resumes that I mentioned earlier can help with that. So
Yeah.
you're right on the money.
I like that there's also something in places where it's like, you can't challenge, a book, but ever so often. Like you can't, every couple of years or something, give it some sort of limit on, how many times you can challenge a book. I mean, those sorts of things in place to help protect, I think, would be really helpful. More of that. Yeah, I love that. And I also think maybe if there's some way to individualize, you know what I mean? Like some of the requests, let's say, like if there's organizations issuing these challenges, perhaps, okay, step forward. Who was this person who, who submitted this claim, and let's see if you actually read the book. Like, whatever your, almost as if, I raise your hand, you were the person, sit before the committee and tell us what, prove why this should be banned. I think just putting more of an individual face on these, these claims could help, because it's easy to stand behind an organization and I don't even know, it feels like robocall or, you know, everybody like spams somewhere, and it raises all these flags, but it's like, okay, well, who's the human behind this? Please step forward and state your case. If there was more of that, I think we might see, you know, a decrease in the numbers of these things occurring.
Yeah, that's great. I think just using our individual voices more, so finding, like, the books that are being challenged, reading them and to find out why they're being challenged is usually the idea behind them. And then going to library board meetings, school board meetings, council board meetings, and advocating for those books, speaking up. Even if it's not on the agenda at these meetings, they usually have space for anyone to make a comment, and you can advocate for these books that are being challenged. You can write your state legislature, say your constituent, and say, you know, I'm advocating for these books. I believe in the freedom that anyone should have access to these books, and you can write a letter to the editor of your local paper, talk to the media, get the word out on social media, because you do have a voice, and we can advocate for these books. There's also Banned Book Week, which is usually in late September, early October. Lots of events for that you can support and be a part of. And then just like ALA, PEN America, and Unite Against Book Bans are all great resources.
Yeah, so I have three quick ones, Jack.
Yeah.
The first one is I really love your idea. I would like to be a judge. And they come by and they go like, you know,
On the big gap.
yeah, and they go like, and they say like, you know, I want to ban this book, and I can go like, I don't believe you.
Yeah.
I would like to do that. I'd like to pull the Ron Burgundy on them. And also, I want to really promote my books more so that we can keep people in North Carolina. There's a lot of people leaving North Carolina for some crazy reason. You know, the Banned Book Week, you know, I'm on the board for Comics Pro, and we do, you know, Free Comic Day and Local Comic Shop Day, and we take very seriously the idea of how to create real value in young people and communities discovering their local comic store. And I do wonder if there's something that could be done on a larger national scale, uniting every library and then bringing creators, you know, from across the spectrum to attend their local libraries, you know, and just like one, like, you know, moment of celebration of these titles for, like, you know, on that, like, a particular day, just something that can really bring national attention, community level attention to the importance of libraries and the fight for some of these individual titles. You can do it every year and really focus it on, like one day where it's just like creators from across the spectrum, kind of like Creators Get Carded, but just really specific to the library scene. I would love to see that and to be a part of that, because I do think, again, that, I mean, we have to be honest, like you said, we have to raise our voice individually, but the challenge, just like politics, and this is all politics, the challenge is that the average American has so many things going on. There's so many things they're scared about, which is by design, by the way, but there's so many things they're worried about at any given moment. And so the only way to really kind of like cement, you know, that moment is to do something really bold and big for a day to just kind of galvanize all the media attention. I think that would be really cool to do.
Much to his parents' surprise, my son entered the world of politics. He's a young man. He seems to be very successful at winning elections. He says he's never lost an election. He's hired by a number of people seeking office or whatever, right, locally and all that. And he seems to be educating us on the reality of all of that. But he told me often, he says, Dad, people think that they can't affect anything. He says, but the mayor in Whittier, this town where he is, won an election by 500 votes. He said, people who show up for council meetings regularly and are just there, the council members see them, they know them. And if you're there, they will pay attention. If they believe you are there and that you have some kind of voice in the community or whatever, they will pay attention. So what Jennie said is absolutely correct. So he made his dad kind of look at himself about what I'm going to do about it. But, if people see you and know that how you feel about it, and you're there all the time at those levels, they'll want to hear you. They'll want your vote, and they'll want your friends' votes. I think in the kit on your site, where the United Against Book Bans offers instructions on how to go to a meeting, how to be prepared, how to answer questions, and all of that. So I think that's very, very helpful, so you don't feel like you're just there and, on your own.
So I do believe that we are approaching our time. Does anyone have any questions that you'd like to ask the panelists?
What would you want a publisher to know in terms of supporting your books in the face of any challenges or anything? What do you want from publishers and colleagues in publishing?
Well, I started about 20 years ago, and when I started, there weren't a lot of brown faces or stories like that. But much to publishing credit, a lot of work to do. But there's a lot of stories from very, very diverse backgrounds now. So I would say keep doing that. Mm-hmm. Just keep doing that. No matter what, good stories rise above everything. Story is king. No matter how, I guess this is what I would say, no matter how someone is trying to ban something, if it's a good story, it'll get out. It'll get out there, and that's maybe where it starts. I don't know.
For me, I feel like having support in telling these stories, just giving creators the space, in a safe space to do the work, and trying not to move them in any direction based on the political climate or what's happening in these discussions, just, continuing to just try to keep them safe to do the work. I think that's what I would need for sure. Not that we've had any bad experiences like that, but that would help me it would just help us to do it even better.
Yeah, just to have the publisher know that they have our backs, right? Mm-hmm. And then when you're doing podcasts or interviews or out promoting the work, that that publisher is behind you, or when you're writing and you want to have a non-binary character, the publisher is behind you 110% from beginning to end of the book.
Sorry, go ahead.
No. For us to even be here today, our publisher, made that possible. Yeah. So I think this is just a wonderful, for them to help give us a space to have this discussion is really cool. So, yeah.
So it looks like that is our time, unfortunately. I'm a poor timekeeper. So why don't we just go down, and if you could tell everyone where to find you, and that way if they have any further questions, they can just reach out to you.
JoeCepeda.com.
Our company's social media is Saturday_AM, Saturday_AM.
So I'm JennieWood.com, and that's JENNIE. I'm also here tomorrow. I'll be at the Mad Cave booth at 10 a.m., and that's booth 2806. And then at the Storm King booth, which is 1935, that's the booth number, at 11 a.m.
Okay, you can find us at gibbssisters.com, and we're both on Instagram by our names. And tomorrow we'll be at the Mysterious Galaxy doing some signings and some panels.
Great.
I'm doing stuff too. I just didn't. I didn't have a little list. I'm not cool like Jennie.
I can't remember booth numbers, so I had to write it down.
I'll be around.
And I'm actually on a panel right after this, which is the history of comics and libraries. So if you're interested in that, stick around. Thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you for talking about this topic. Thanks again for the library for hosting. Thanks San Diego Comic-Con. And thank all of you for being here.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.